Evelyn's fingers trembled as she traced the grooves of the unfamiliar symbols marring her grandmother's coffin lid. The wood had been smooth and unblemished during the funeral just a week ago, yet now it bore intricate, jagged markings that seemed to pulse faintly under her touch. The air in the mausoleum grew thick, and the scent of damp earth clung to her throat. She had come alone to say her final goodbyes, but the discovery twisted her grief into something darker, something alive. Her grandmother, a meticulous woman with a quiet fascination for the occult, had always warned her about prying into forbidden knowledge. But Evelyn was a historian, and the allure of the unknown was too strong to resist. She snapped photos of the symbols, her phone screen casting an eerie glow over the coffin. As she turned to leave, a whisper brushed against her ear, a voice neither human nor wind. The mausoleum door slammed shut behind her, though there was no breeze. Back in her apartment, Evelyn spread out her notes, comparing the symbols to ancient texts. They didn't match any language she knew, yet they felt familiar, as if she'd seen them in a half-remembered nightmare. That night, she dreamed of her grandmother standing at the foot of her bed, lips moving soundlessly, eyes wide with terror. When Evelyn woke, her sheets were damp with sweat, and on her forearm, faint red lines formed the first symbol from the coffin. The marks faded by morning, but the dread lingered. Someone, or something, had left a message, and now, it was watching. The rain pelted against the windows of Professor Crane's cluttered apartment as Evelyn unfolded the photograph of the symbols, her hands trembling. The air smelled of aged paper and candle wax, the only light coming from a flickering desk lamp. The professor, a gaunt man with deep, set eyes, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses as he studied the image. His breath hitched, and Evelyn knew instantly that he recognized them. "These are from the lingua mortis," he murmured, tracing the lines with a bony finger. "A language of the dead, used by ancient seers to commune with the departed. But it's not just a tool for speaking, it's a bridge." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And bridges can be crossed both ways." Evelyn's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" Professor Crane leaned in, his gaze intense. "Deciphering these symbols could wake something up. Something that shouldn't be disturbed." He hesitated, then pulled a brittle manuscript from his shelf, its pages crackling like dry leaves. "Your grandmother may have known this. Why else would she hide them?" That night, Evelyn dreamt of faceless whispers, their words slithering just beyond comprehension. She woke gasping, her sheets damp with sweat. A sense of dread coiled in her gut. Something was wrong. When she returned to Crane's apartment the next morning, the door was ajar. The place was ransacked, books strewn, candles overturned. The manuscript was gone, and so was the professor. The only thing left behind was a single page, torn at the edges, bearing a hastily scrawled warning. "He is listening." Evelyn's blood turned to ice. The symbols on the coffin lid seemed to pulse in her memory, and for the first time, she wondered if she was the one being watched. Evelyn's sleep had always been restless since her grandmother's funeral, but now it was worse. The dreams began subtly. A whisper in the dark, a shifting shadow at the edge of her vision. Then, the hollow man arrived. His form was indistinct, like smoke given shape, but his voice was razor-sharp, slithering into her mind. "She sent me," he murmured, the words dripping with false tenderness. "Your grandmother has a message for you." The air around him felt heavy, suffocating, and Evelyn's skin prickled with unease. She tried to focus, to ask what her grandmother wanted, but the hollow man's presence warped the dream. The walls of her childhood home twisted into elongated, grotesque shapes, and the scent of damp earth filled the air. His blurred face tilted toward her, and for a moment, she thought she saw something. A jagged grin, hollow eyes. "The marks are the key," he hissed. "Read them, and you'll see." Evelyn woke with a gasp, her sheets damp with sweat. Moonlight spilled through the window, casting long shadows across her room. Then she saw them, the symbols. The same intricate, jagged markings from her grandmother's coffin now carved into her bedroom walls, as if etched by invisible hands. Her breath caught. They hadn't been there when she went to bed. The air was frigid, her exhales visible. Heart pounding, she reached out, tracing one of the symbols with trembling fingers. The moment she made contact, a jolt of icy pain shot up her arm, and a whisper echoed from the hallway. "Too close." The hollow man wasn't just in her dreams anymore. She wasn't sure he'd ever been. The candles flickered violently as Evelyn knelt on the floor of her dimly lit study. The ancient manuscript sprawled open before her. The symbols from the coffin lid stared back, their jagged lines seeming to pulse in the dim light. She had spent sleepless nights researching, poring over every scrap of information she could find, until she stumbled upon the ritual. A desperate attempt to banish the hollow man from her dreams. Her hands trembled as she traced the symbols onto the floor in salt, her voice shaky as she recited the incantation under her breath. At first, nothing happened. The room remained still, the air thick with anticipation. Then, the temperature plummeted. Frost crawled up the windows, and the candles snuffed out one by one, plunging her into darkness. A low, guttural whisper filled the room, echoing from no discernible source. Evelyn's breath came in ragged gasps, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Something was wrong. The words she had spoken weren't a banishment, they were an invitation. A sharp knock at her door made her jump. She hesitated, then crept forward, peering through the peephole. Mrs. Talbot, her elderly neighbor, stood motionless on the porch, her face eerily blank. Evelyn opened the door, relief washing over her, until she saw the woman's eyes. They were hollow, black voids, devoid of life. Mrs. Talbot's lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, a wet, choking noise gurgled in her throat. Before Evelyn could react, the woman's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with inhuman strength. Evelyn yanked herself free and slammed the door, locking it with trembling fingers. Through the window, she watched as Mrs. Talbot turned slowly, her movements unnaturally stiff, and began to pace the perimeter of the house. The hollow man was no longer confined to her dreams. He had found a way in, and now, he was wearing her neighbor's skin. Evelyn backed away, her mind racing. Whatever she had unleashed, it was far worse than she could have imagined. The ritual hadn't banished him, it had set him free. Evelyn's hands trembled as she pored over the brittle pages of her grandmother's hidden journal, the ink faded but the urgency in the words still palpable. The symbols, those damned symbols, weren't a message from her grandmother at all. They were a lure, a snare set by the hollow man, a soul trapped between worlds, desperate to escape. Her grandmother had discovered his true nature too late, and in her final days, she'd tried to bind him within the coffin, using the very symbols Evelyn had mistaken for a farewell. The realization struck her like a physical blow. Every apparition, every whisper in the dark, had been a manipulation. The hollow man hadn't been her grandmother's messenger. He'd been wearing her voice like a mask, coaxing Evelyn deeper into his grasp, and now, with Mrs. Talbot's hollow-eyed stare haunting her every step, Evelyn understood the stakes. The hollow man needed a vessel, a living body to anchor him to this world, and he'd chosen her. Her grandmother's journal hinted at a ritual, one that could seal him away for good, but the instructions were fragmented, the pages torn as if someone, or something, had tried to erase them. Evelyn's breath hitched as she traced the jagged edges. Had her grandmother done this? Or had the hollow man tried to destroy the knowledge that could stop him? A cold draft slithered through the room, and the symbols on the walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Evelyn's skin prickled. She wasn't just deciphering the past, she was racing against it. If she failed, the hollow man wouldn't just claim her. He'd use her to tear open the veil between worlds, and nothing would stop him from dragging others into the darkness with her. She had to finish what her grandmother started, even if it meant facing the hollow man on his own twisted terms. The night was thick with fog as Evelyn stumbled through the cemetery gates, her breath shallow and uneven. The weight of the ancient manuscript pressed against her chest, its pages filled with the symbols she now understood. Symbols of binding, of sealing away something that should never have been disturbed. The air was unnaturally still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She could feel him watching her, the hollow man, his presence a cold whisper against her skin. The graves around her seemed to shift, their shadows stretching unnaturally toward her feet. When she reached her grandmother's plot, the earth was already disturbed, the coffin lid cracked open like a hungry maw. The symbols carved into it pulsed faintly, glowing with a sickly, greenish light. Evelyn's hands trembled as she traced them, reciting the incantation under her breath. Then, the ground beneath her feet trembled, a sound like 1,000 whispers erupted from the grave, and the hollow man rose, not as a shadow this time, but in full, grotesque form. His body was a shifting mass of darkness, his face a void save for a mouth stretched too wide, filled with rows of needle-thin teeth. "Evelyn," he hissed, her name dripping with something like delight. "You've come to join me." His hand long, skeletal fingers ending in hooked claws, reached for her. She dodged, but the ground beneath her feet turned to sludge, pulling her down. The hollow man laughed, a sound like breaking glass as he dragged her toward the open grave. Desperate, Evelyn slashed her palm with the ritual knife, her blood splashing onto the coffin lid. The symbols flared bright, and for the first time, the hollow man screamed. The battle was a blur of pain and terror. The hollow man's form writhed, his edges fraying as the symbols burned brighter. He fought back, his claws raking her arms, his voice promising horrors untold if she dared to finish the ritual. But Evelyn gritted her teeth and pressed her bleeding hand to his chest, carving the final symbol into the air between them. Light erupted, blinding her, and for a heartbeat, the world was silent. When she opened her eyes, the grave was sealed. The hollow man was gone, but as she stood there shaking, she felt something shift inside her. The symbols on her skin pulsed once, then faded, but not completely. And in the distance, the whisper of laughter lingered, just beyond hearing. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she pressed the blade against her forearm, the cold steel biting into her flesh. The final symbol, the one she had spent sleepless nights deciphering, had to be carved into her own skin to complete the ritual. Blood welled up in the grooves of the ancient mark, and for a moment, the air around her seemed to vibrate with a sickening energy. The ground beneath her feet trembled as the hollow man's shriek echoed through the cemetery, a sound like rusty hinges forced open after centuries. His form, a writhing mass of darkness and distorted features, twisted in agony as the symbols on Evelyn's arm flared with an eerie, pale light. The wind howled, carrying whispers of languages long dead, as the hollow man's essence was dragged back into the grave from which he had clawed his way out. The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn collapsed to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The symbols etched into her skin pulsed faintly, their glow dimming but never fully fading. She glanced at her reflection in a nearby puddle. Her eyes were hollow, her face gaunt. The battle had taken its toll. As she stood, wincing at the pain in her limbs, she noticed something new. A fresh symbol, unfamiliar yet disturbingly similar to the others, had appeared on her palm. It wasn't there before. She clenched her fist, but the mark remained, itching faintly as if alive. Walking away from the gravesite, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches clawing at the overcast sky. She glanced back once, half expecting to see the hollow man's silhouette among the headstones, but there was nothing, only the wind, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. The symbol on her palm pulsed once, a warm throb against her skin, and she knew, this wasn't over. Somewhere, deep in the darkness, something else was waiting, and now it had marked her too.